Good morning, everyone. My name is Garrett Sheehan. I'm President and CEO of the Greater New Haven Chamber of Commerce. We're going to get started with our program in just a couple of minutes. And if you're just joining in, thank you for logging on right now. We will be getting started with the program in just a couple of moments. All right, well, thank you, everyone. We appreciate you joining us. This is our fourth election forum that we've done in a series as we get ready for the 2020 state legislative elections. We want to thank our sponsors as we get started this morning. We've been supported throughout this entire pandemic by Connecticut Natural Gas, Southern Connecticut Gas, and UI, part of the Avangrid family, so we appreciate their support. Our election series has been presented by AT&T. Again, this is our fourth one. We partnered with the Shoreline Chamber of Commerce, Madison Chamber of Commerce to speak with candidates along the shoreline, Milford Chamber of Commerce, Orange Chamber of Commerce, and West Haven Chamber of Commerce to talk to candidates in that area, especially around Milford, and then the Quinnipiac Chamber of Commerce when we met with candidates from North Haven and Wallingford. Today, we're focused on our candidates from New Haven and Hamden. And so I want to thank Alexion, who is our sponsor for this forum here this morning. And to join us and say a few words is George Lotto, a new board member to the Greater New Haven Chamber Board of Directors. And he's also the Chief Information Officer and the site lead for Alexion here in New Haven. So George, good morning and thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much, Garrett, and welcome to the candidates. Very nice to see you and meet you. So honored to be here and be a new board member. Thank you for the election. My name is George Lotto, and I'm the Chief Information Officer at Alexion, and also the site head for the Alexion facility here in New Haven. I'm also a board member, as Garrett mentioned, at the Chamber of Commerce, and excited to help promote the efforts of the organization in the coming year. And so I'll talk a little bit about Alexion. We're incredibly proud to be founded in Science Park, and we went to Cheshire for a number of years and came back to New Haven. And really proud to be anchored in New Haven in the Connecticut area, where we have our Center of Excellence for Research and Global Product Development for Alexion globally. We have our labs, and we've invested in our labs. We're investing this year, in fact, through December, and we're continuing to support the growth and diversification of our product pipeline. New Haven, as I said, is where we were founded, and it's part of our DNA. So thank you very much for having us. We currently employ over 900 individuals. 550 are permanent Alexion employees, and the other 350 plus are contractors that we employ for work, within the area for the company. And we have 81 job postings at the site so far. So we're continuing to grow in New Haven. Our work in research and development on early medicine candidates, from preclinical studies into clinical studies, and ongoing efforts to develop new medicine delivery systems that improve patients' lives, are being worked on right in our facility at 100 College. I know I've met some of you, and I look forward to meeting the rest of you quite soon, and hopefully in person once we get past this, and get back to face-to-face meetings. I'd also like to introduce you to two members of our government affairs team. Jack Quinn, who we recently hired, is our head of government affairs, and PJ Samini is our local counsel in the Connecticut area, who both are joining today's event. So hi guys, how you doing? And so again, we're very proud, and Garrett, thank you. We're very proud to sponsor the event, and I'm excited to hear from everyone about the issues facing our state. So thanks. I'm looking forward to the exciting event today.
Great, thank you, George. We really appreciate this support from Alexion all year long. And Alexion was also a sponsor of our public policy summit, so very involved and engaged in the community. And we just continue to do more. So glad to have you on board, George.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. All right, so we're ready to get started. Now I will admittedly let everyone know we're a little light on candidates right now. We had several that committed that we have not had join the Zoom yet. So we're trying to reach out to them to find out what's going on. But we have 3 with us, including Representative Josh Elliott, who is running for the 88th House again. So Josh, good to see you.
Yeah,
Thanks a lot. Also have State Senator Gary Winfield, who's in the 10th Senate District. He can turn on his camera and audio. And George Cabrera, who is running for the 17th Senate District as well. So all 3 of you, thank you. We did reach out to several candidates. I know there's many in the New Haven area who are running unopposed. And so they chose not to participate in this, even though we did give everyone the opportunity. And then again, we do have a few more people who had said they are joining us, so we'll get them on when they join in. But I do want to thank the 3 of you for being part of this, because even if we have unopposed candidates, I think it's a great opportunity to hear some of the issues that are important to you, hear issues that are important to the business community as well. Since we have a small group starting out, we'll just ask each of you the questions that we have prepared, questions about the business community, and we're going to give each 2 minutes to answer those questions, and then we'll move on to the next set of questions. We'll close out this morning with closing statements from each of our candidates, and I think we have Eric Mastrioni too. I'll let you know who's running for the 96th seat in State House of Representatives. He's with us too, so we'll get Eric up in just a moment. Josh, I'll start with you, and our first question is about the pandemic. So many small businesses have just been really devastated by the economic downturn that has accompanied the pandemic. I know your family and you are small business owners as well. What are some of the things that you think the legislature can do moving forward? Are there things that the governor has done well, things that you think the legislature would do differently in the upcoming session as we continue to deal with these issues into 2021?
Yeah, I mean, I think the best thing we can do is ensure that these COVID percentage rates go down. I think the best thing that we did earlier on was just enact really strong policies to ensure we got over these bumps early. I mean, it's not going away on its own, and the longer we postpone taking the virus seriously, the longer our businesses will have to either just have less occupancy, or people will be more fearful to go outside. Because I mean, we can say that we've opened up the state, but if people don't feel safe and they see, you know, the percentage of infection rates creep up to 3 or 4%, that there's not much that we can do. In terms of anything we can do monetarily, you know, a lot of that has been waiting for the federal government to be filling in the holes. I know myself personally, I took 2 PPP loans, one for each of the businesses, and that was exceptionally helpful to stave off some of the business losses. But I think the best thing we can do is just to continue to ensure that people are wearing their masks, ensure that people are being safe, ensure that we have good contact tracing, and ensure that when the vaccine is out, we do our best to ensure that as many people get vaccinated as possible, because that's the only thing that's going to get us out of it. I do know that in terms of looking down the line, what's going to happen with the state budget, we just got upgraded from looking at a $2 billion budget deficit to a $1.2 billion budget deficit over the next biennium. So that should help us hopefully breathe a small sigh of relief. And we were able to get up to just shy of a $3 billion rainy day fund. So that was going to allow us to weather the storm a bit, but it also means that we haven't been making nearly the same level of investment that we would normally. So I think in terms of looking down the line, businesses don't have to worry too much about any sort of major tax increases. Although I will say I will be working on tax equity over the next couple of years because that is one of my top priorities. So I think that there's some good things down the line, but we definitely need to continue to be safe.
Thank you, Josh. Senator Gary Winfield. Gary, similar question in how you think that the legislature can support small business. And I know we've talked with a lot of restaurants who are getting concerned as cold weather sets in. Outdoor dining's been very successful, but that's going to force them to make changes as well. Are there more things that the state can do to support small business?
Thank you, and thank you for having me. I think we have to have an overall way of thinking about recovering from the impact of COVID. And I think whether you're talking about small business or larger businesses, there are some similar things that we need to do. I think the first, and we've had crises before that help us to think about this. So I think the first thing we have to do is along the lines of what Josh talked about, and that is deal with the issues, the human issues, right? Human welfare and the such, and begin to think about what it would be for those human beings to get back into an economy. So whether that be prioritizing new ways of training those people and things like that, I think those things are important. I think we need to look at the trends that existed prior to the advent of COVID-19, because they'll be instructive. And I don't just mean the trends in business, I mean the trends in how people were able to access jobs and employment, because we need to get those people into jobs and employment. And there are people who are left out of the economy. We need to be thinking about how to bring those people in. I also think that, and we've done some of this both at the federal level and at the state level, we need to be thinking about crisis relief that gets us to the point where we're in crisis recovery. And so when we talk about that, if you think about some of what you've seen with PPP, whether it worked the way we wanted it to or not for everyone we wanted it to, I think that's the kind of thing that we should be talking about. The state has done some of that. And I think you know that in the last few days, the governor had a press release talking about the Connecticut CARES Act and a couple of $1,000s that would go to small businesses and nonprofits. And we need to be thinking of an overall plan in which we do that kind of work. And I think that's how we're going to prop up our economy.
Okay. Thank you, Senator. And George Cabrera, running for the 17th Senate District. George, a similar question about how we support small business, and do you have any disagreements with what the governor has done? He's been working under executive order. Do you think there's a larger role for the legislature moving forward in supporting small business?
Thank you, Gary, first for having me and for hosting this forum. I really appreciate it. Early on, when this started, I think most of you know, I represent grocery workers in Connecticut at Stop and Shop, and I think it's important to remember how what we've been through. And in the beginning, believe it or not, our fights here as a representative for grocery workers was just being able to get adequate PPE to our members on the front lines who are putting food on the tables all across Connecticut. So I think we need to continue being vigilant and making sure that a lot of frontline workers, and especially small business employees, have adequate PPE, making sure that contact tracing is in place, and also hazard pay. Gary's 100% right. I think it's really good business when you take care of your employees, and we need to be mindful that a lot of these workers are coming into contact with the public a lot more regularly than a lot of us, and they're performing essential functions, and we need to make sure that hazard pay is in place for those folks and they're protected on the job. I think I'm a little concerned about a little complacency setting in Connecticut. I'm seeing a little bit of doors. I think we need to continue our campaign of vigilance, reminding people to do the basic things, wear their mask. And then for small businesses, I think Governor Lamont has done a good job. I think that, heading into this next phase, as we see a bit of an uptick in Connecticut, I am concerned about how to continue to support small businesses as we head into the winter time. And I think, as Josh mentioned, or Gary, I'm going to be looking to see what our improved economic condition in Connecticut to make sure that there's funds to support small businesses. And the reality is we have to acknowledge the fact that I think business has changed forever, and we have to make sure we support those businesses as they do approach their business in a different way, make sure they have the support for that new normal, that new landscape.
Thank you. Appreciate it. And I'll turn now to Eric Mastriani. And Eric is running as a Republican in the 96th House District, that is New Haven and East Haven. And he's running against Representative Roland Lamar, who did respond to us, and he's doing homeschooling, so he apologized, but could not attend today. So Eric, thank you for joining us. And same question, if you're elected, how would you see, and what would you ask the legislature to do to support small businesses? And I think we've got your mute on there.
I'd like to say hello to everyone, Mr. Winfield, Cabrera, and Elliot. I am also a small business owner in New Haven. I'm also on the independent ticket. And I have to say, honestly, I agree with all three. Small businesses are the backbone of your society instead of these big conglomerates like Walmart and others. Mr. Cabrera, you say you represent the grocery workers. Thank you for what you do. I'm also local 371. And for my people, I ensured that they were taken care of above myself because, you know, it was unfortunate what happened. We didn't see it coming. And in the future, like Mr. Winfield said, and the rest, we have to have things in place that are able to help them along when things like this unfortunately happen. If it's tax breaks or even freezing their taxes for a while and then picking it back up and other relief. One constituent asked me, what would I do based on the issue of not getting thrown out of the apartment because of it? And one thing I suggested, and I don't know if the other three would agree with me, is give that landlord a tax incentive to go ahead and keep, you know, providing that they were in good standing, to go ahead and keep them in that apartment and get a tax break for doing so. And also I would give resources that like I went out and seeked people who were unemployed due to the COVID to work my campaign.
Great. Thank you, Eric. And we'll move on to our next question topic, and very much related, and I've heard it come out through many of the candidates, talking about our workforce. There are so many people who are unemployed, facing unemployment right now. And really a two-part question. I'll give you each an opportunity to answer. First, how we can deal with unemployment, just even in the transactional standpoint of Department of Labor. I know there's been a lot of challenges in making sure everyone gets their checks, and much of that has been resolved, and you know, as the system has adjusted, things have been improved. But how we take care of those on unemployment? Any thoughts to being able to get them back to work in 2021? And then we still, even I can tell you from the chamber standpoint, we speak with a lot of businesses that actually are hiring, but they're having trouble finding workers with the right skills. So any thoughts of how the state can be involved in making sure that we're giving people the right skills to match the jobs for tomorrow? So there's a lot in there. You can take the pieces of it that you want to address. And George Cabrera, we'll start with you on this one.
Thank you. That's a very important and critical question. I've spent a large part of my career advocating for the trades. I think that we need to do a much better job as a state in making careers in the trade attractive. I speak to advanced manufacturing owners in our district, and I've also spoken to many tradespeople. And you know, we have a problem. We don't have enough people going into the pipeline. Some advanced manufacturing jobs, by the way, very good paying jobs, middle class jobs. And I think we need to do a much better job in Connecticut of investing in those pipelines. I call them on-ramps to the middle class. And that's everything from carpenters, advanced manufacturing, you know, really good high-skilled jobs, make them more attractive to young people who don't want to go attain a four-year college degree. And that's something that's sorely needed. That's something that's in the Senate. I meet people all the time, and we need to start investing in those opportunities again.
Thank you. Senator Winfield, I'll turn to you, and I don't know, maybe you want to have your assistant answer this question, but go ahead on unemployment issues that we're facing and workforce development.
I'm just happy only one of the twins showed up so far. But I think this is what I was getting at in the first question when I was talking about the government being involved in the acquisition of skills and training. I think George has it correct that we need to think about the trade, but I think we also need to think beyond that, and the government needs to, in light of the coronavirus crisis we have, look at the market itself, look at trends, and figure out what type of training would help us to get people into the jobs that come out of COVID, because all of these crises create new markets, and we should be thinking like that, not just trying to build jobs so that we can say we built jobs that respond to constituents. Building jobs that build us into the future, I think, is the way that we should be operating. And to that, I think, and I'm going to thank you on camera the way that I thanked you off camera for the relationship that you've been able to build with some of us who haven't always, Gary, come on, who haven't always been very comfortable engaging with the chamber. Because I think those conversations could come out of that don't always come out. And when those conversations come out and we're actually working together, then we can have information coming from those who are in a small business, from those who are in business in general, that we otherwise would not have. So I think more of what the chamber is currently doing is important so that Connecticut can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Appreciate it. Representative Josh Elliott, same question for you. I know you've been involved in trying to help people through the unemployment process, and then also on these broader workforce issues.
So our jobs have changed fairly dramatically over this past year. We came into session twice instead of having the full 3-month session. And as a result of that, also coupled with the pandemic, my job and Senator Winfield's job has almost exclusively been, actually that's not true, because Senator Winfield did pass the police accountability bill. So my job has been almost exclusively been constituent services. And a large part of that has been helping people navigate the Department of Labor. So in terms of anything that I could say, it would be simply just contact your representative or senator, assuming that they are responsive. I know that we had almost 100% success rate when people came to us, helping them navigate that. They got us the information, and then we acted as the liaison between them and the agency. So I feel as though the Department of Labor did a really good job during this crisis. When it comes to investing down the line, I've been hearing from a number of professors from CSCU, SCSU, and a number of our other state-run universities. And what I'm getting concerned about is our disinvestment from our public education, higher ed infrastructure, in that if we want to have an educated workforce, we need to be continuing to invest in that infrastructure. And we know that the vast majority of people that come through that higher ed public infrastructure, they stay in Connecticut. So I think the best thing that we can do is to continue to pay our professors well, to ensure that we have a robust system where we have college that's accessible to everybody in the state. And that is one thing that's on my radar that I'll be paying attention to over the next cycle.
Great, thank you. And Eric Mastriani, same question for you, addressing unemployment, how we can support so many people have just lost their jobs, now going on many months, and in some cases, no end in sight, and just overall workforce issues that we're dealing with in the state.
I would commend the state that first unemployment had a hiccup and glitch, but then they handled it pretty well, I believe. But also to give a quick background, like Mr. Winfield, I was in the military. I was a civil engineer with the Navy Seabees. And the reason why I went that path is because of the trade classes that I took: marketing, ICT, drafting, and a few others. And I agree with Cabrera too, that we have to bring back the trade classes. And I made a suggestion that we bring back, I've talked with a few of the unions that for the trades, that you do an apprenticeship program. And one summer they would, starting from freshman in high school all the way to senior, they do apprenticeship programs. And then if they want, test out and join the union after that, they'll get a college education without the college debt. And correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Winfield, there's a thing called BMR, Basic Military Requirements. For what I know as the training officer for 3 years of the Sea Cadet program, these young people did the requirements as we did for electricians, say, and so on. They did that work, we turned it in, and they received college credits. for doing it. And we could help that way. And also in New Haven, we need to open up a resource center. I am the co-chair of Ward 10 in New Haven. And what I've been doing is knocking on doors, talking with my people and seeing how can I help to search resources for them and guide them to resources that are needed.
Right. And thank you all for your answers on that question. We'll move now to talking about the state budget. I know it's something that we're always talking about and always dealing with challenges as far as deficits. I shouldn't say always, but for the last many years, it feels like we've been addressing potential budget deficits. There is a forecasted deficit for this year, although there was some good news in the past week that cut almost in half based off of some high tax returns that have come in so far. But I'll leave the question very open and ask you, how you expect for the state to deal with the projected deficit. I think it would be just over $1 billion right now based off the current projections. But obviously there's a lot of fluidity in how that plays out. But no doubt we are facing some financial issues going forward. So Eric, I'll start with you on this question and your thoughts on the state budget, and if that will require tax increases, rainy day fund, other options that are on the table.
What we need to do is, correct me if I'm wrong about being too broad, but we need to control spending. I know that's hard to do because we have pensions and other things that we must fund. And also we need to make Connecticut more attractive to attract more people to stay here, live here, come to live here, and grow our tax base.
Great, thank you, Eric. Let me now turn to Senator Winfield. Same question about the state budget.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really difficult. I think that we're going to do a lot of the things that we've done in the past. We're going to take a look at what the receipts are at the point where we're doing the budget, figure out what the hole is we have to close. And despite what people have said, I've spent my time in the legislature making cuts, cutting programming and other essential things. And you've watched this kind of push and pull that happens, where the legislature looks at things that are important and tries to figure out how to continue to do them without engaging in a conversation about tax equity that Josh was talking about. And then there's a smaller conversation about that tax equity, and we usually don't do much about it. I think we have to have a real conversation about it. I think we have to be willing to potentially do things that may politically not be the thing that we want to do, but that's reality. In terms of bringing businesses into the state, I look at New Haven and I say, part of the problem is that we don't do the greatest job of marketing the amazing things we have. When I think of New Haven, I think of an airport down the road. I think of major rail. I think of 2 major highways dumping into New Haven. I think of the numerous colleges and universities. If I had a business, I don't know where else I would want to be. But we don't do the greatest job of saying to people, this is what you can get for being in New Haven. And hey, if you like New York, you're 90 minutes away from that as well, right? And so we've got to think not only about what's right in front of us, but what we can bring into the state. Look, there are people moving into the state all the time. People focus on those moving out, but there are people moving into the state all the time, and there's a reason for that. And we need to focus on that and let people know that that's why they want to be in the state of Connecticut.
Thank you. George Cabrera, same question.
Yeah, I think Gary's 100% right on this. I mean, we have a great quality of life in Connecticut. Granted, we have some serious issues, the so-called 2 Connecticut's that we need to tackle. And there's lots of things we have to work on, but we have a really good quality of life here in Connecticut. Our schools overall are really good, and we need to do a better job of marketing and selling ourselves to potential employers. For me, I always focus on the quality of life of the people I'm seeking to represent and the people I've been representing for 25 years. So I think, in terms of the budget, let's celebrate for a moment that, the economic news that just came out is good. It makes our job a little less difficult when session gavels in, but it's still going to be difficult. I think we need to do what I've always done, and I think is the right thing to do, which is that do the least amount of harm to those that can at least afford it. And that means putting a priority on workers and families' budgets. And I think that's good policy. I think when workers feel that their work pays off, when they can make enough money to support their family, I think that's not only the right thing to do, but I think it's good economic policy because that means there's more disposable income, which means more economic activity, especially coming out of this pandemic, which I hope we're going to come out sometime next year. There's going to be pent up demand. Gary alluded to that. We're already seeing lots of people moving into Connecticut. Real estate is moving really fast. People are bidding over the asking price. We have to tell our story, but we also have to when it comes to the budget and dealing with deficits, one, honor our obligation that we made in our pensions to workers, especially teachers and other workers who perform a very important function. And secondly, seek to make sure that we deal with our tax policy in an equitable way and not harm those that are most vulnerable.
Thank you. And Representative Elliott, same question on the state budget.
So I remember being in caucus a couple of years ago when Representative Walker was leading us through what the next few years, decade would look like. And basically the point that has stuck out with me ever since is that every single year, our fixed costs account for an additional 1% of our overall budget every single year. And cumulatively, that's a really big problem. And there's very little left to cut. The problem is that our pensions and our debts are just accounting for a larger and larger percent of our overall budget every year. And the question is always, do you make cuts or do you raise revenue? And when we're saying making cuts, very often we're talking about going after the middle class's wages and income. And so what I'm fearful of is that we have done a lot in terms of ensuring that there's been huge givebacks by the unions. And the question is, do we want to continue going back to that well? Because what we're ultimately doing is going after a large part of the buying base of Connecticut. And everything that I've read from statistical data shows that even if you're raising taxes on the wealthy, that they ultimately stay in the state where they are. And even if some people leave, people will come in to fill those gaps. And so for me, a big part of what we need to be looking at is tax equity. And when I say that, I point to a 2014 tax incidence study that the state commissioned, which we should be putting out every biennium, but we haven't been. And what it showed is that the more money you make in the state, the less you're paying as a percentage of your income to state and local taxes, a large part of that due to how prohibitively expensive our property tax structure here is in Connecticut. So a few things I want to do is tie capital gains to income, bump that top marginal tax rate, and ask the people who have it really well off in Connecticut to be a bigger player in the system, simply because the stock market isn't reflecting what is happening on Main Street right now. We are seeing gains that are exorbitant over time, but it's the middle class that is having eviction issues, having obviously rent issues, not able to have their jobs, maintain their jobs, and also with a loss of $600 every week from unemployment and the federal government not coming back in, stepping back in, we have some really big cracks down the line, and cutting our way out of it is simply not going to be feasible.
Thank you. Thanks for everyone's responses to that question. Next topic area is social justice reform. And as was mentioned, police accountability bill was passed in special session this summer. I want to ask each of the candidates first if you see more statutory changes that will come forward in the next session. We all know there's a lot of individual changes that need to occur within organizations and just society, but if there's more statutory changes that you expect to occur. And also, how do we address the many disparities that are very plain to everyone now, from the health disparities we've seen through COVID, and even now as we look across at schooling, I am reminded that we have New Haven students that don't have the option for a hybrid or in-person school right now, while much of Connecticut elsewhere does. So I'll start off with you, Senator Winfield. I know you led the charge on the bill that was passed this summer.
And the other one showed up. I think we should expect to see more statutory changes, both directly related to the bill that we passed, because as many people know, there's a conversation still going on about the bill. There are legitimate concerns with the bill, and concerns I would put in the category of illegitimate. And so I think you should expect to see some statutory changes. And also there's a task force that was convened in the 2019 police accountability bill that most people don't even recognize happened. And they're required to come back in January with suggestions, out of which would come a bill. So I think on the issue of policing, we should definitely be looking to see some statutory changes. On the issue as a whole of equity and race and the things that we've been talking about for over the summer, they do not want to let me talk over the summer. I think that one of the things that I've observed is there's a lot of agreement that something is going on, but when we get to the policy, that's where we break down. And I think this is an instance where we have to listen to the people who have the problems, because if we just throw a solution at these things that doesn't reflect what the people who have the problem actually experience, then we go home, we feel good, but those people still sit with that problem. And years later, what we'll be saying is, I don't know why you have the problem. Well, I'm here to tell you that if you don't deal with it in a way that empowers the voice of the people who experience it, that's what you're going to see happen in this state.
Thank you. And thanks for your coolness with a lot going on around you. So we appreciate it. Eric, I'll turn to you.
Okay, I agree that we have a problem. I am pro-police, anti-police brutality. Just like in the military, we should come up with evaluations, just like you do with us soldiers who go to combat, and when we come back to see if we're fit for duty. Also, I think and anyone correct me if this is not, that we should put them back on patrols in neighborhoods like years ago to be seen in the neighborhoods and get to know the families like it used to be. But again, I am anti-police brutality.
Thank you. George, same question on social justice reform, police issues, but also other areas where the legislature may take action or that you see there's a need for action.
Yeah, it's a very good question. I think this pandemic has laid bare the immense disparities that we have in the state of Connecticut. And I think that these are disparities that I know Gary, Senator Winfield and Josh and others have been painfully aware of for many, many, many years. And it's unfortunate that it's taken a pandemic to kind of put them front and center. But I think there's an opportunity here to really begin to tackle. And when you talk about social justice, you can't just talk about accountability. That's a very important piece and a very important piece of legislation. And you also have to remember that for years, we have not been investing in the things that we know help people's lives and help with upward mobility and quality of life. Things like funding our public schools adequately. Things like what we've talked about here today, making sure that there's those on-ramps to the middle class, not just making college more affordable or community college, which the legislature has done, but also making sure that people have access to training, making sure small businesses are supported. Dealing with the healthcare disparities. We're seeing so many disparities with this pandemic, making sure people have high quality, affordable healthcare. That's why I'm a big supporter of the Connecticut Public Option Bill, championed by Senator Matt Lesser and Sean Scanlon. It's got to be a holistic, systemic approach to dealing with these disparities. That's real social justice. And we've got a long way to go. We've definitely made some progress, but those are the things that I'm really focused on, and it's got to be a systemic, holistic approach to all those things. And I think once we start doing that, we'll start to get closer to having real social justice in Connecticut.
Thank you, George. And Josh, I'll let you close this out on this question.
Sure. Could you just reframe the question one more time?
So we're asking about social justice reform, if there are more statutory changes that you anticipate that the legislature will take up beyond changes in society, but things that need to be addressed from a statutory standpoint. And then also specifically addressing disparities in health. And even as we've seen in education, that the education experience was different before, but even more different now while we're going through the pandemic.
That is a huge question.
I'm trying to put a lot into all these questions.
Yeah. One thing that sort of I know it is something that I've been hearing is this issue of SROs in schools, of resource officers, that it is a classic push-pull of the urban versus the suburban, and this idea that officers in schools can stop a mass shooting. And I don't think that they can or do. And what ends up happening is that they end up being seen as creating this police state within the school system very early, making children feel as though they're being watched and monitored from a very young age. And I think that it sets the stage for this combative relationship between people and the police. That's one thing that I still think we need to work on, and that I think in a large part because of our governor, we took a pass on. I think that I would love for us to see us come back to that. I certainly don't want to speak on behalf of Senator Winfield, but I know that the senator has been working on this issue as well. When it comes to police generally, what I thought was really interesting about this bill was the amount of misinformation that was out there in terms of what this bill actually did, creating a class of lawsuit that was already available on the federal level, just not on the state level. So it's not like we were creating something that didn't already exist out there. And the amount of just false information that was put into the waters to make it seem like Democrats are anti-cop was really fascinating to me, because we're anti-bad cop. And what we want to make sure is that when we have actors that are there being paid by government, that they aren't subjugating people and allowing, they aren't able to kill people without repercussion, essentially, or abuse people without repercussion. And that's what it was for me, what this bill was. And Camden, New Jersey completely eliminated their police force, built back up, and now for every 8 hours someone is on the beat, 4 hours is actually spent maintaining relationships with the community. And that's what I think that we're looking for from people that are employed by state and local government, is just having relationships with folks and not acting as though any minor infringement can be punished mercilessly. I do think that the majority of folk that are in the profession are there to do good. At the same time, there are a lot of people that defend those who don't, even when they make a mistake. Because if you and I are to make a mistake and we shoot and kill somebody, there is punishment. The difference is if you have a badge, there's often not. And that's where I think that there needs to be a change in the dialogue. Your question is too broad. I'll cut it off there. There's more I could talk about, but at least when it comes to police accountability, that's my take.
Thanks, Josh. And yeah, definitely, we're packing a lot of topics and issues in here. And so I appreciate you all answering succinctly to things that I know we could spend an entire webinar on for sure. We're going to ask one more question about healthcare, and then after that, we'll do a closing statement. So on the healthcare front, again, we'll put a lot of topics under one question. There has been a mention of the public option. I know that came up last legislative session, was raised at the beginning of the session that was abbreviated here in 2020. So I'm interested on your thoughts if you support a state public option and how the effectiveness of that. Obviously, we're a business organization, so we have a belief in business, and I know that any public option, will have components that are taken care of in the private market. So just interested to hear your thoughts on how that can be effective compared with private options. And also, I'll add in one more topic. Our hospitals have done yeoman's work over the last many months, and it appears they will continue to have to do so during this pandemic. They're facing significant losses. So any thoughts on if the state will be able to provide more support to the hospitals as we go through the rest of the pandemic? George, I'll start with you.
Great. Very, very important question. It's something that I hear on the doors when I'm knocking on doors in my district over and over again. Not a day goes by where someone doesn't share a healthcare story with me. The fact is, healthcare is too expensive, and people are making really difficult choices. I meet seniors every day who are making choices between paying for their prescription drugs or paying their rent or buying food. I meet people who are paying really high deductibles and really high premiums. They often never hit their deductibles throughout the year. And so essentially they're paying for a plan that really isn't providing much of a benefit. And I think this is a critical, important issue. I'm going to be working on this very closely. This is a really, really critical issue. And I think, from what I'm seeing and hearing, there's a couple of things that I really want to focus on. One is the cost of prescription drugs. I know there was legislation last cycle that didn't make it through, but I think, it boggles my mind that we're not able to make it easier to buy drugs from Canada than here at home in the United States. The second is preventative care. I think we need to do a much better job of having, making sure our healthcare system focuses on preventative care. And then to your earlier point about hospitals, I was just on the line with AFT over at Bacchus Hospitals. They went on a 2-day strike. Nurses and frontline workers in these hospitals are really putting their lives under risk in the middle of this pandemic, and we have to do everything we can to make sure that they're paid well, that they're receiving hazard pay, that they're protected. And I would be very interested in looking into any losses the hospitals have, because obviously, especially a hospital like Bacchus and other smaller hospitals that are meeting the need of populations where otherwise they wouldn't have access to healthcare, is really important that we support them and that they remain open to provide care.
Thank you. Josh, I'll turn to you.
Yeah, I think one glaring issue we are seeing in this pandemic is that we just can't have health insurance be tied to employment. That as soon as people lost their employment, they're losing their health insurance too. And so that is one major concern that I have. I would say making progress in Connecticut on the topic of health insurance, I don't know how optimistic I am. And the reason I say that is because when I first got elected, I talked with, his name is Jonathan Gruber, I want to say, and he's an MIT person who was tasked by the Vermont legislature to come up with a robust report about how to implement a single payer system in Vermont when Democrats held control of both chambers and the governorship. And he came out with about a 250-page report, of which I skimmed, and it was very insightful, and it talked about the political aspect of getting this bill passed and not just the actual functional aspect of it. And what he told me over the phone was, if we couldn't get it done in Vermont with that amount of Democrat control at all those levers, there's just no way it's going to happen in Connecticut when you're one of the insurance hubs of the world. And I think that, even looking at what Representative Scanlon and Senator Lesser put forward last cycle, as soon as someone sneezed, we were able to walk away from this bill, even if it looked like we actually had support. So I don't know what actually getting any sort of functionally important insurance bill over the finish line looks like politically, because there's just too many people that are in the system that don't want to see any sort of public option. And the fact is, any sort of public option is going to be de facto very expensive if it's side by side with a private option. And that is because that private actors are going to want to simply just be making money, taking healthy people out of the market, leaving people that are more at risk on the books of public institutions, which is going to mean it's more expensive. So I don't see the path forward here unless people agree that we're willing to decimate an industry. I personally think that we shouldn't be saying that if you are sick, it should be a sentence to bankruptcy, but we have not come to a point where the political opinion is there to back us up to make some sort of deep functional change yet.
Thanks, Josh. Eric, same question about public option and also supporting the hospitals that are facing some large deficits.
Okay, I'd like to begin with that. I believe that we, no matter what, if you're a Republican or Democrat, we must come together and work together to provide affordable health care for the people of Connecticut. If I become legislator, of course, I will reach across the aisles to work with them because it's essential, because it affects all of us. And I think education-wise, we should educate the public to steer them more towards the urgent care centers instead of overwhelming the ERs for small things. I think that would help a little bit with hospital costs and debt. Say you have a cold. Instead of going to the ER, go to urgent care center. It's cost effective and it doesn't overrun our system. There is a lot of affordable healthcare out there. We got to seek it out, and especially ones that deal with pre-existing conditions, and make sure that. And I agree with the cost of prescriptions. We got to find an option to get less costing prescriptions because our prices are high, and why not entertain the idea of bringing in lesser price prescriptions? I'm with you, Mr. Cabrera, on that. And just overall, we got to make sure we provide good health care for all in Connecticut.
Thank you. Sarah Winfield, you're alone.
Yeah, I was able to get them to go see mom. So I think, look, we have a human crisis here. People cannot get the healthcare they need. Healthcare is too expensive. So I want to start off by answering the actual question. Yes, I would support the public option that we've been talking about. And we've nibbled around at this thing, not just in Connecticut, across the country. We have this conversation going on at the national level constantly, and we have not done what we need to do. And part of it is because it's easy to scare people. It's easy to tell people you're going to have to be rationing your healthcare and all of those things. But you know what people are doing right now? They're rationing healthcare. They're trying to figure out what thing can I do that I don't have to do the other thing, and how can I manipulate it like this and like that, because they cannot afford healthcare. And so we have to understand that the market is not going to drive down prices the way that we talk about it. If the market was going to drive down prices, that would happen. The market's not doing that. In fact, prices are going up. There's conglomeration, monopolies are becoming the way that things operate. Hospitals are eating up other hospitals. We know what is happening, and we have to look at what we see in front of us and not have some theoretical conversation about what's going to happen. And that's a hard thing for people who are elected to do, because you have to go out to the public and say to them, I know you don't want to hear this, but we're going to do something that, you know, we haven't traditionally said we're going to do. Now, while we're doing that, we do need to be engaged in conversation with the business sector and the hospitals about the impact on them and figure out what we're going to do. But we do need to have conversations that we've been unwilling to do. And so some of us need to stand up and actually say, look, this is nonsense about the rationing of healthcare. And I just want to make one point. I'm wrapping up. I saw it in 30 seconds. You know, somebody said something about you shouldn't have to go into bankruptcy. Some people wish they could go into bankruptcy to get healthcare because they can't afford to make it day to day. That's the situation we're actually facing here.
All right, thank you, Senator Winfield. And we've now reached the point we're going to do our closing statements. So 2 minutes for those, and I appreciate everyone going through all of our questions and putting together some really succinct answers and addressing them and attending. So Representative Josh Elliott, I'll start with you to close us off.
Yeah, I'm running for my second re-election for my third term. I think a large part of this job is, especially given the last year, is the customer service side. And it's what I take the most seriously. So I'm not sure how many of my constituents will be watching this, but one thing that I say when I'm at doors is that I'll always get back in touch with you. And I'm always here, maybe not to solve your problem for you, but to get you in touch with a person who will. When it comes to policy, you know, I really focus on issues of criminal justice reform, because I think that the people that we need to be protecting are those who aren't on these calls, who aren't part of this conversation, which you heard me say last time, and I might say next time if I am reelected. And I think that's a lot of where our attention should be focused, because if we bring up the base and we help those who are the most underserved, I think that's what builds an economy. And it's always easy to focus on those who have the biggest swings because they have the most money. But I think that if we have a wider base of people with disposable income, that is what will keep us on doing so well economically. And especially right now, in a time when people are flooding the state from New York, and as much as we like to complain about whether it's quality of life or property taxes, you know, you compare us to a lot of these really bustling urban centers that are nearby, that are global behemoths economically. We're a very strong draw for them. And as long as we are investing in transportation and making it easier for people to go back and forth from Boston, New York City, we're going to continue to be really well positioned to do well economically as a result of our proximity to these strong economic centers. And so for me, what it means to have a strong economic center here in Connecticut means investment. It means investment in infrastructure so that people can get back and forth from the city easily. It means investment in education so that everyone has equal access to a strong educational base. And it means that we're investing in things like information technology to ensure that everyone has affordable access and reliable access to the internet and can do their work from home, like we've seen through the pandemic, is so necessary. And things like telehealth and investing in infrastructure for the internet so that you can ensure that even if you can't get to a hospital, you're able to talk to a doctor from home. So it comes down to investment. And I think that especially when we're seeing such an economic downturn and we're seeing so much revenue lost because of that, it's even more important to be helping those out who aren't benefiting from a stock market that is just skyrocketing.
Great. Thank you, Representative Elliott, for joining us this morning. Eric Mastrioni, let me turn to you for a closing statement. And again, we appreciate you being here, and you are running in the 96th House District.
Great. Again, good to see everyone on here. And thank you for having me, guys. Points. Go ahead and invest in neighborhoods that are forgotten, like Cedar Hill Avenue, Newhallville, Fairhaven, and other parts, and get more businesses to open up there, especially small businesses. We have to back small businesses very much, for they're the backbone of our society. And I agree that education should be equally funded so we can have a quality and strong education. And we must capitalize on all the talent that we have here already in Connecticut with our young people. And we must invest in them, for they're the future.
Thank you, Eric. Thanks for joining us. Let me turn now to George Cabrera, who is running in the 17th Senate District. And George, thanks again for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me, Garrett. I appreciate the opportunity to come on and to talk with you and the rest of the panelists. You know, elections are serious business, and who we elect matters, you know, and I think this election in particular is one that is going to set a course for not only our country, but our state, about what kind of society we want. That's what it comes down to. You know, I think about my parents who blessed me with a great home full of love and taught me the values of hard work. And when I talk to people in the 17th district, from Derby and Sonia and Naugatuck all the way down to Hamden, it's really simple. Do we really believe that hard work should pay off? Because I meet people every day who are working really, really hard, and they're just not getting ahead. Many of them have a second job or a second part-time job to make ends meet. I don't think that's the kind of society we want to live in. So for me, it's about how do we make hard work pay off again? How do we have some sense of justice in various communities in this district, making sure that kids have access to a great education so that they can make their dreams come true, making sure that a healthcare scare or a healthcare crisis doesn't bankrupt the family or throw them into debt for decades, having access to college that's affordable so people don't go broke despite having a college degree, and making sure people feel safe in their communities, that they know that we're going to hold powerful people and powerful corporations accountable, whether it's Eversource or the cop on the beat. That's what elections are about. That's the kind of state senator I want to be. And I think that we have to really continue the fight, continue to bring these issues up, the issues we brought up and discussed here today, a more just, a more equitable Connecticut with those on-ramps to the middle class. People will figure it out if we just create the support for them and the kind of environment where they feel that their hard work is going to pay off.
Great, thank you, George. And Senator Gary Winfield in the 10th Senate District.
Yeah, first, thank you all for having this. I think I'll just end talking about that and the importance of having these conversations to actually get policy done. A lot of what we hear is political talk. It makes everything easy, even if it's easy in the wrong direction. You either do this or you do that, and it will fix everything, and that's just not true. If you heard the responses today, you know that this is all complex and it's all serious. And as Joyce said, elections are serious business. So we need to be engaged in the more difficult conversations. That's the way we're going to get policy done that reflects the voice of everyone. We're going to get policy done. That's going to happen. The question is, whose voice is going to be a part of that, and what is it actually going to do for the people of this state? So I want to thank the Chamber for the work that it has done to increase the conversation, to make it possible for persons like myself to come and have the conversation in the space, because I think that makes for a better state. Now, we may not agree at the end of the day, but we'll also do something that we weren't doing before. We'll understand how the policy actually happened. And so while we might not agree, we might not be thinking that this policy just happened for no reason, or it happened for bad intent. We'll understand why we got there, and that still allows us to continue on. So I just want to thank you all. And look, if we keep doing what we're doing now, you can have, I'll come back anytime. So thank you.
Great, thanks, Senator. I appreciate it. And thank you to all of our candidates for joining us. And I want to give a thanks again to Alexion for supporting this. And our overall series, we had close to 40 candidates across the entire region that participated in these forums. So great opportunities to have dialogue about the issues that are impacting our state. I'll just close everyone out here. We do have our Big Connect. We've done everything virtual over the last several months. And so our normal business to business expo is going to be the same. And in fact, we're going to change it to 4 days of virtual speaking. We have some great speakers already lined up. Frank Sesno, many of you know from CNN, will be talking. Ross Dotat, who is a columnist for the New York Times and actually lives in New Haven, is going to join us on Thursday, the 19th. So we have opportunities if you want to be a booth exhibitor. We have virtual booths, lots of fun stuff and great speakers throughout. So that is coming up. Again, thank you to everyone who joined us. You can watch these webinars, including this election forum, will be on our YouTube page. And I do just want to mention Senator Martin Looney was supposed to join us. He had a conflict come up and he's been trying to jump on, just couldn't make it happen. So I do want to thank him though for trying to join us. Thank you again to all of our candidates and have a great day and hope everyone votes on November 3rd. Take care.